President Trump says student loans, nutrition, and special needs programs will no longer be handled by the Department of Education. He told reporters in the Oval Office today that the responsibility will now fall to other departments. The president recently directed that the federal student loan program, servicing about 43 million borrowers, will be shifted from the Education Department to the Small Business Administration. Joining us to discuss is Carrie Ingram, Director at the American Center for Transforming Education, and Stacey Schultz, President of Educate and a former teacher and school leader in New York City's Department of Education. Good to have you both with us. The terms of the federal student loans are set by law and contracts, so if you have a loan balance now, that doesn't change. But Stacey, I'll start with you. Is there anything else that could change for current students with this development?
You know, one of the things that could change, obviously, is that the SBA doesn't have any experience in managing student loans, which could lead to additional ineffectiveness, right, and errors and disruption in services. Additionally, we do wonder, even though in the executive order they said they would not touch public service loan forgiveness, there is some concern over how that will be redefined, which is in fact what has said will be done. So I do think those two things are something that we need to be concerned about and might change for students and would create more disruption.
And Carrie, from your perspective, how much is the risk here for the issues that Stacey's just raised?
Well, quite a different perspective, because look at what happened under the Biden administration. Student loans was an absolute disaster in how it was managed. It was unlawful in this attempt to forgive student loans and remove that financial responsibility from borrowers and put it on everyday Americans who chose not to go to college to be saddled with the debt of others. Unlawful, not effective. But what the Trump administration is doing is they are moving this $1.6 trillion loan portfolio of over 43 million borrowers to the SBA. This is what the SBA does. It's much better to have those financial experts who manage a significant number of loans every single day than have education policy people manage this astronomical amount of loans. It doesn't make sense to continue to keep it there. It's a key part of dismantling the education department, and students are going to be better served. This will be managed better, housed under the SBA without question.
Stacey, your response, considering the issues that were just brought up, and also, I suppose, the downsizing of the SBA itself. Critics have also pointed to that in their concerns, but just touching on the worries that you raised earlier, Congress is required to alter any of the protections that are already in place in statutes in terms of protections for students. So how do you respond to those points that were just raised?
Well, I think, you know, the SBA does not manage loans like student loans. And in fact, during COVID, they mismanaged loans for pandemic relief, right? We saw taxpayers have to pay a lot on inappropriate people getting loans, right? They didn't have the level of oversight that was needed to ensure the people that were applying were the people that should receive it. And then they had to pull back a lot. And it was also a long, arduous process. As a small business, I run a small business, and I had some real trouble with that platform. It shut down, it crashed. People who actually didn't need the money got the money. Then we had to wait to get money to support all of our employees. And we were luckily able to make it work, but it was a real disaster. Speaking of disasters, that was a disaster. And I just want to point out again, the SBA does not have experience facilitating loans that are similar to student loans.
Carrie, on that point, also drawing on this concern about the SBA recently being downsized, and critics are saying that there are issues around the experience that the SBA has in transitioning into this, as we just heard. But on top of that, if there are if there are protections in place enshrined in statutes, how likely is it, do you think, that Congress could change some of those with the current makeup of Congress? So two aspects there, responding to these concerns and how likely are changes that need to change through Congress.
Well, Stacey's exactly right. Things were an absolute disaster under the Biden administration across federal agencies. Look at the Department of Education, SBA, both thankfully for the American people, the days of the Biden administration are behind us. It is a new day. President Trump has proven as a business leader that he knows how to manage money. He has put an effective, proven leader in the head of the SBA. She's prepared for this. Her team is ready. Now, who's been downsized from the SBA? It was where Biden staffed up for COVID relief loans. We are not in a pandemic anymore. And so Trump is bringing those numbers back down to the mission critical positions at the SBA. They manage loans day in and day out. They are going to do an outstanding job with this. And the American people can rest assured they're going to have a much better customer experience with their loans going forward. As far as Congress, the president is clear. He has outlined to the Secretary of Education that she is to do everything lawful in her power to dismantle that department. While it's going to take Congress to officially eliminate the department, line by line, they're going to cut this thing down and make it more effective for the American people by moving these services to the agencies where it makes sense. And federal student loans is just one prime example where we need financial experts, not education policy people, managing a $1.6 trillion portfolio.
Stacey, based on Trump's track record, as we've got so much of it so far, how do you respond to Kerry's answer here?
Well, first, I want to say that those SBA loans were open while Trump was still president. So I want to correct that statement that it was under Biden. It was actually started under Trump. Second, I want to say that as a track record, as a business owner, what we have seen is actually Trump has bankrupted many businesses. And in fact, educational leaders and educational policymakers do, as leaders, manage budgets. And sometimes school districts have very large budgets, as we know, that are mostly funded by states. And they have financial wherewithal on how to manage large budgets. So I think that's short-sighted and incorrect to say that they don't know how to manage finances. And I would also just say the SBA also has never had this large of a portfolio. So if we're trying to say, hey, we need someone who really knows how to manage this financially, then the SBA is also not the agency.
Kerry, I want to turn now to the impact on educators, potentially, of this change. Do you see anything there on that front?
Absolutely. So much positive is coming for educators. Bringing education back to the states is going to empower local control, and that's going to trickle all the way down to the classroom where teachers are empowered to do what's best for the education of their children. And looking at the federal Department of Education, while they've only put in 10% of funding to K-12 education, they've heaped on like 90% of the rules and regulations all through this bureaucracy. And in the 45 years that the U.S. Department has been in existence, student learning has only gone down. It has been a massive disaster. And so this is a win for education. It's a win for the states. They're going to be able to make decisions best for their students. There'll be accountability. It is a new day, and teachers will benefit from this as well as students, parents, local communities overseeing the education of their children.
Stacey, your response?
Well, states already have local control. Communities already have local control of education and the autonomy within the districts to make a lot of decisions. So I think that argument is faulty because of that, right? The federal agency, the Department of Education, is really there to set some national standards, not dictate locally what happens, not dictate locally what happens in a classroom. And they never have, right? So I think that's something that we need to just say again. And What I do want to say is, unfortunately, what these cuts are doing is cutting opportunities for continued research, for allowing us to see what is working and what isn't working in education. Additionally, the current downsizing of the cuts within the DOE that is really impacting teacher training and the different resources to support teachers in their growth that in turn support students. I also want to note, we look at standardized tests often, but there's something to note around how many students, the percentages of students who have gone to college have increased. The percentages of students who are have additional wealth is increasing. I want to say that those are statistics and information that we don't point to often as being success measures of education. The K-12 education system is not just about what happens in the K-12 system. It's about what happens for young people as they exit that system and how well are they living the life they want. And while I don't want to say there's not work to do, because there is, I want to say it has improved situationally for many people.
And those are all great points. I do want to follow up with you that on the aspect of the immensity of the student loans today, and also just the education system itself not performing at its best as a common insight here in America, globally, in terms of on the global stage, right? So what do you think needs to happen to improve on those things?
We've got 7 out of 10 public school children in our country who cannot read on grade level and who cannot perform math on grade level. That is a death sentence to their future. We have to do something different. This 45-year experiment of the U.S. Department of Education has not worked. And to Stacey's point about teacher training, absolutely, thankfully, the Trump administration has cut teacher training that is based on DEI. DEI is not going to help our children to learn to read, phonics, to do math, to learn reasoning, critical thinking skills. And so that is a great move to cut millions of dollars of teacher training and replace that with training teachers in how to teach the basics. Because DEI, first of all, has no place in our schools. It's right to cut it, but it's going to free up time where teachers can actually be educated to be effective in students learning to read, write, and do math, what we desperately need for the future of our country.
And Stacey, what's your take on how to improve education for the U.S.?
I mean, so many things, but I do need to address the DEI misconception, and I want to say it all the way through, the 3 words that it represents: diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that say to you? To me, that says that everyone is welcome and everyone belongs and everyone should have access to education, and the education that they need and the education that they deserve. So when we say we're cutting DEI initiatives, what are we saying really? And it's such rhetoric and such a misconception of what it is. And in fact, I want to point to that a lot of the teacher training money went to things like teaching science of reading, not DEI, but the science of reading, right? Which actually, let me backtrack on that. That does connect to DEI because you're allowing equity of reading instruction. That many people say the science of reading is research-backed and inclusion-based, right? So that it can reach all of the students. So I just want to say, let's look closer and not just take the rhetoric that's coming at us and see what are these actual programs. I also want to say standardized testing is not the only way, and in fact, it's a poor way to measure the actual learning that is happening inside of schools, the actual growth that is happening inside of schools. I was just on Friday at a youth empowerment conference in Queens North in New York City that was organized by the high school students there, where they celebrated their diversity through their dance, right? Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. It's actually quite beautiful. And it's part of what this country is about, sharing in our diverse backgrounds and sharing that with each other. I also want to say, talking to those young people, they were talking through how being in public school, help them really grow, meet the moments, meet different people, support their thinking and expand their thinking and their perspective. And so I can go on and on. I know we don't have all day, but so I'll stop there. But I do have a lot of ideas about how we can improve education in this country. But it starts with looking at these spotlights of where it's going really well instead of just shining the light on what's not working.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you. Call 877-476-1681. That's 877-476-1681. Call now.
And I do want to come to you both soon for ideas about how to bridge the gap between these differing opinions. But first up, Carrie, I'll give you a chance to respond. And then perhaps if you want to give a final comment on how we can communicate better to move forward as a nation on education.
Well, as I wrote in the Wall Street Journal, public schools are not about access. Children are restricted to assign a specific school based on their zip code. So as Stacey mentioned, public schools is DEI being about access. Education freedom is where parents have access. And so breaking down the public school monopoly that is only educating 3 out of 10 children in the basics is essential. Giving the money to moms and dads, which we are seeing, which is sweeping this nation. 15 states now have universal school choice, bringing real access to parents to select a quality learning environment that is going to effectively educate their children in reading, writing, and math, and making sure that they are not trapped in a residentially assigned public school that has no access to high quality academics, but they're focused on things that do not belong in schools and do not belong in classrooms.
All right, and just to finish up, I'll start with you, Stacey, and also moving forward, how to bridge this gap in communication potentially and move forward together as a nation on education.
You know, I think that, and we've talked about this on this show before on NTD News, right, of how do we bring the voices together and the different stakeholders to really design a educational system that meets the needs of all of the community. And what I'll say is in pockets that is already happening, right? If you are in a community where there's a school board and you can attend those school board meetings, right? You can influence what is the learning. You can have conversations about what is the learning. But what I think we need to do more of is respect that educators are professionals and do know about teaching and learning and can and should weigh in more. I actually think it's the voice we hear the least in this conversation. And so I think if we want to bridge the gap between communication, I think we need to hear more directly from the teachers about teaching and learning and have these consortiums and opportunities for further dialogue and shared design like they do in some of those top countries that people like to point to that are, scoring well, right? When you look at them, teachers have a high level of respect and they bring together different stakeholders to inform at a high level, but educators are the ones really pressing upon like what happens in teaching and learning.
Carrie, last word.
Hey, I just want to say moms and dads had a front row seat into their child's classroom during COVID through those remote Zoom sessions, and they were dissatisfied and they are looking for alternatives. And thanks to the leadership of many governors across this country education freedom is becoming a reality because we cannot lock our future generation in this public school monopoly that is failing 7 out of 10 children. That is a death sentence, like I said, to their future. It's going to have economic, workforce development, societal consequences. And we've got to get education back to the states, closer to parents who know and love their children best and are going to make great decisions about their children's education.
It's a topic very close to many people's hearts and to the future of the nation. Thank you so much for your time today, Carrie Ingram and Stacey Schultz. Great to speak with you both.
Thank you.